Thursday morning breakfast show. The US government has sued TikTok for illegally collecting children's data and not responding to parental requests to delete accounts. The Department of Justice claims TikTok's action represents a large-scale violation of child privacy laws requiring parental consent for data collection on children under 13. So what's this all about? The Department of Justice, or as known as DOJ, claims that TikTok's actions are in direct violation of Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or known as COPPA. This lawsuit highlights growing concerns about the way social media platforms handle children's privacy, particularly in the context of United States-China tensions. The TikTok platform, which has previously faced legal action in 2019 for similar violations of COPPA. TikTok has been accused of collecting a vast amount of data from users, including location data, browsing history, and device information for children. These practices are particularly concerning as they may not fully understand the implications of data sharing, browsing history, and device information. For children, these practices are particularly concerning as they may not fully understand the implications of data sharing. TikTok and other apps have faced criticism for targeted advertising and in-app purchases that exploit young users. There have been instances where children have unknowingly spent large amounts of money on these platforms, leading to calls for stricter regulations. Political motivations behind the scrutiny of TikTok are tied to broader US-China relations, which have been increasingly strained over trade, technology, and global finance. The US government views TikTok as a potential tool for Chinese influence and data collection, and the lawsuits and discussions of bans are part of a broader strategy to curb China's technological reach and safeguard American interests. Let's go and talk to our first guest on the morning who can shed some light on this topic. We've got with us Professor Kevin Curran, who is a professor of cybersecurity, executive co-director of the Legal Innovation Center at Ulster University. He is one of the most interviewed technology experts in the United Kingdom, with over 2,000 plus interviews in recent years. Good morning, welcome, assalamu alaikum, and peace be on you, Professor Curran, and thank you for giving us your valuable time on the breakfast show this morning.
Good morning.
Professor, what are the key privacy laws and regulations that TikTok might be violating, according to the lawsuit?
Yes, of course, we have regulation in the US and on this side of the Atlantic as well. And this comes in the wake of TikTok being fined almost 13 million by the UK Information Commissioner's Office last year for more or less the same thing, where the watchdog in the UK found them that they didn't protect the privacy of children. But here, of course, the US are cracking down as well, of course, and they've had a long-running tit-for-tat with China over this particular app, again, because it is Chinese-based, owned, again, where most of the top 10 apps in the world are Western-based, most of them being in the US, again. So here that they can be found, of course, to be actually violating the GDPR, again, the regulations that we have in Europe, because that also applies if anyone in the US is serving EU citizens, again. But also, the US also has a Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, again. So this, again, applies to any information being collected from children under the age of 13, again. So it requires operators of websites or any services directed at children to notify parents to obtain their consent before collecting, using, or disclosing information on children. And in many cases, TikTok has been found to be violating this very key act for protecting children.
Now, as you so rightly say, TikTok is a Chinese platform, and in China, it's very heavily regulated. Or that's what that's what the news tells us, that it's regulated, and the government has control over what is on there and how long and how it's being used. But these regulations in the United States and Europe and UK, will they actually in real terms have an effect on TikTok, considering it's a Chinese platform?
Yes, of course. No, it should. I mean, the US have really come down heavily. In fact, that it's almost certain that ByteDance, the owners of TikTok, will have to sell the platform to an American owner. It's become that serious again. That the US government see them as a real threat again. And of course, anyone who's ever been to China, I remember being stunned, and I didn't prepare the first time I went to China with my phone. At the time, it was Android, but literally nothing worked on my phone because everything was connected to Google. My maps didn't work. My email didn't work. I didn't have the VPN in place before I went, so it became impossible. It really, your phone becomes a piece of junk for most of your apps if you go to China.
Yep.
So believe me, they know how to control what's on, what the citizens are using again. So if they do it again, the West see themselves, so why can't we do that again? So, of course, no, the US are really coming down heavily on them. And in fairness, even though TikTok is quite intrusive, whenever you go there all the time, it'll keep asking you to add, to allow a lot of permissions again. But in truth, it doesn't collect any more than the Facebooks and Snapchats and others.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, how does it differ from all the other platforms which are non-China, which are more UK and Europe based?
It comes down like, okay, TikTok does get a lot of extensive data if you give it the true data again, like your browsing history if you're using the in-app browser, which is very intrusive. Location data, your device that you're using, your IP address, geolocation, and some biometric data again. So this is broader than a few of them, but again, it just adds up again. Whereas Facebook, of course, and Instagram collect a lot of information again, like user location, user content, interaction with others again, and the primary use of that is to target advertising again, and so does Snapchat, and you can go right down the list. And TikTok more or less gathers that as well. But it really is to do with the ownership and again, a little bit more than that as well. That like this is political. Because again, look at 100. So just deal with the US again. So you get over 1 billion users worldwide, and in America you have 170 million users of. That's half the population. So again, and one thing is again that most young people now and so many other people are getting their news from social media. That they don't go to they don't buy the Guardian anymore like we used to, or the Times of London. So therefore, the US government have seen it as, okay, this can be repurposed for political ends again. So the Democrats fear that it'll be used for the right, and of course the Republicans fear it'll be used as for the left again. So both sides are distrustful of thinking that China can bend the election or be part of an influence the way that Russia tried to do that with Facebook postings again. So it is seen as a political threat more so than in reality. The US government don't really care as much about the privacy of people. They care about control.
Yes.
And it really comes down to that.
Well, it takes me on to the next question, because I'm so glad you said that. It is a political conundrum from a US or even UK and European perspective. But you mentioned earlier that if you go to China, your phone effectively it seems as though your phone is just a piece of junk because of the regulations and the control Chinese government have. But that brings me to the ethical point. To some people, that would be control, or it would be abuse of your freedom. But to some people, it would be the opposite, where control is necessary. So from an ethical standpoint, what responsibilities do all of these social media platforms have to protect their user, especially in this particular scenario that we're talking about under 13-year-olds?
Yeah, again, if you go back to the Online Children Protection Act, but also the GDPR regulations, of which I'm sure even in your studio and everything else, you have to, everyone gets trained for it. It's handling data and everything else. And actually, it's one of the few laws from Europe which actually did make sense. But it's overpushed. In other words, governments can make terrible decisions, and the EU do many of them. One of the most stupid decisions ever made from a technological point of view was the cookie warning, the pop-ups that we get.
Yes.
And you don't get them in Europe.
Which nobody understands.
That is ridiculous. That is completely ridiculous, and only politicians would have put that in place. In other words, that is supposed to tell us that sites are using cookies and all it does is interfere with us, with every site we go to, and it doesn't do anything for security. Instead, in some ways, GDPR came along with what us as technical people were saying from the start. Put the onus on the tech companies. If the tech companies are found to be using intrusive cookies and taking information from us and sharing it in a bad way and everything else, fine them. And that's what GDPR does. It allows companies to be fined up to 20 million or 4% of their annual turnover if they're found to be, say, sharing data with others, taking data from us by having checkboxes ticked already. In other words, and also maybe storing our data which is not protected properly. All the things which you would want a company to do properly with our data, then fine them. But the cookie warning does nothing, and I still can't believe they haven't taken it away. So
what is? I mean, you raised such a. It makes me laugh because every time I sit there and I think, well, it gives you three options: reject all, accept all, or you can custom. What's the right answer?
Reject all, and until you find some data, oh my God, my site's not loading, or this is not playing, then go back and accept all, because really, they've scraped all the data you ever have. It depends. Everyone's got a different attack surface again. Like, for instance, my granny doesn't have to worry as much about some things as I do because I work for, government watchdogs and whatever, cyber security. But of course, I practice safe computing. But really, it doesn't really matter because most websites, because the internet was built with no one foreseen it would become the center of commerce in the world. It was built as a military project to allow the U.S. Army, for instance, to communicate without having a centralized system. So if one site was taken down, could they still communicate? And email, when I was using a computer back in 1988, I've had a computer for 40 years, by the way. We didn't have passwords on our computers.
No.
We just logged in.
That's it.
No one foreseen it would become the center of commerce at our password. It would become the center of our universe as well. So everything's a bolt-on, and so were cookies. So in other words, every time you load up maybe Amazon and you've been using it an hour ago, you don't have to retype in your password, your login, because the cookies are there on your computer helping you maintain a session, as we say, a user session that you've logged into. So again, cookies are useful. In fact, they're essential for the functional usage of the internet. But of course, they can be intrusive again. But in other words, that everything's an add-on really, because the internet was not foreseen to become the hub of modern life.
Now, finally, what steps can our listeners take or users take to protect their privacy on social media platforms? And is that even a realistic question, considering data is the most important and the most valuable commodity one can talk of in today's times? Can they really protect their privacy?
It's very difficult because nowadays a lot of tracking. Google and the others have changed a lot of the policies before. So advertisers are actually angry at Google, even though Google's complete business model is to do with advertising. But they've come under so much pressure for the intrusive nature of third-party cookies and being tracked from site to site that Google have scrambled their kind of tracking in such a way that advertisers don't like. But generally, you can be tracked by every browser has a unique fingerprint. In other words, not only your IP address being shown, but when you log into a website, the website will always get your IP address, your geolocation, wherever you are. It will also get the name of the browser. These are called banners, and all computers display them when they go to a website. So it can tell that you're on Internet Explorer or Firefox or Chrome. You can tell which version you're on. You can also tell the extensions you're on and the size of your screen layout. In other words, that's what we call fingerprint, browser fingerprinting. Advertising companies with nothing else can identify that you've gone to another site simply by the browser, just by the device that you've used to log in and the browser window, in other words, and they're collecting that more and more. In other words, computer advertisers are very, very clever. So when it comes to protecting yourself online with privacy, I mean, it's very difficult. Of course, you can try and create fake throwaway accounts, and like I said, even if you log in from Instagram and you completely put in your wrong name and a fake email, an email address that doesn't link back to your primary email address, you will still be tracked. The advertisers will know that you're visiting site B because you're on site A, and going to Site C, because just what I said, because it will know what kind of browser you're on, and it does, and with all these factors in it, it's very able to narrow you down and say with 99% certainty that you who just gone now to that website, which is dodgy, are the owner of the site that you went to earlier, and that actually you typed in your username. So just presume that a lot of your privacy is gone in modern systems, really. And, there's different ways you can do it as well. You can go into, the anonymous browser again, incognito mode as well, but again, a lot of people fail to understand again that only does not save, that only stops saving the sites that you've gone to in the history on that local computer. But your internet service provider knows every site you visited, and so does your VPN, again, which people think is the savior for everything, and it's not. It's only useful in some cases. But your internet service provider knows every website you've gone to. So even if you're in incognito mode, believe me, if you send a death threat to the Prime Minister, the police will be knocking on your door even if you did that in incognito mode. Don't be too smart online. Everything can be traced. Everything.
Finally, my second finally, we are talking about the protection of under 13-year-olds, and we've talked about the government, we've talked about the responsibilities of companies, but end of the day, we are living in an age where there's a lot of parents who are not tech friendly, who are not aware of what they are and what they're not supposed to do. How can they protect the under 13-year-olds in this environment that we have spoken about?
Yeah, I mean, they basically got to have the children in the same room quite a lot. You've got to go to their devices.
I mean, we always say that, but that is the harsh reality, isn't it?
It is because I, as a parent, I gave my children so much freedom, and again, generally, if the child is good in the real world, they're good online as well.
Yes.
So because if you come from a good family, good parenting as well, but again, my kids were precocious. They were brought up with computers, from a very early age as well, and they just happened to be very honest kids. But so there's no way that I was going to the devices all the time. But really, I would is basically, obviously, you should, if they're under 13, you have the right, and you're not breaking their privacy because at that age they should be innocent. You have the right, and you should have the PIN code to their devices. Even if it's not you, you should be able to give it to a member of your family who's tech savvy to go through and just check that the kid is not going and doing things here and there and not being targeted by someone.
Yeah.
And it's for their protection. You're not that's not a privacy intrusion when you're under 13. So what I would say is review their devices, speak to them about how people contacting them, and not to trust anyone on the internet, that people lie or can lie and whatever else. And it's just to be there. And to be honest, which is we come from Professor of Cybersecurity, I don't worry so much, especially if you come from a good family and you have the right rules and boundaries in place. I worry more about the time wastage.
Yes.
Really, because you can waste your life online, and again, and all the false narratives of Instagram. Warn your kids about everyone's putting their best foot forward, that they're only putting the good pictures up, they're only putting when they're on holiday, but what is their life like behind the scene? Yeah. Keep talking to your children about the fakeness of social media, especially the Instagrams and the Facebooks again, that people are not like that every family has got its own sorrows and its own struggles. And also, don't have devices at the dinner table. If you do anything in life, ban the devices at the dinner table and make sure that you eat as a family. There is nothing more important than eating together and talking as a family. And even though it can be hard because because everyone's so busy and you come in from work, you're trying to get your dinner ready, you just let the children have the tablets and the devices and then they come in and you yourself are tired. But if there's one advice I would give any family is to put down the devices, including the adults, by the way, at the dinner table and speak as a family, and that will bless you and your children for many years to come.
Awesome. Professor Kevin Curran, I couldn't find a better way to finish. I think you've done that. I thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. I wish you a fantastic day ahead. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be with you, sir.
Same to you guys. Okay.
That was Professor Kevin Curran, some fantastic advice there. I mean, look, he is the cybersecurity man. Everyone is talking to him, and look at listen to the advice he gave right at the end. We are talking about the protection of under 13-year-olds. We are living in a society, and we're living at a time where kids are parenting parents. The narrative has changed, and parents need to take back control. You know, if faith, rules, family takes precedence, discipline in the house, and it's not. We hear always an infringement of the rights. Professor Curran said it. Look, that's not an infringement to get your child away. Would you allow your child to put their hand on fire? No. This is same. Social media is there. Algorithms are there to entice them and to keep them on their platforms, and they will entrap them slowly. That's the job of these people. And as a parent, it is your job to ensure that you put measures in place to protect them, and that those measures don't have to be drastic. They are as simple as what Professor Curran has said. But then, if we look at the advice that has been given to us as a community, or within this community, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the fifth Caliph of the Promised Messiah, and the fifth successor of the Promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah strengthen his hand. He's been talking about this as far back as I remember, going back 12 years. I think it was 2012 or 2011 when His Holiness gave sermons on protecting your children from Facebook at that time. Even longer, I think it was going back 13, 14 years ago. And look how far we have come to. I sometimes look at the advice that His Holiness gave 10, 11, 12 years ago. People are coming to understand it today, but sometimes today is too late because their children have already been affected by they've got hooked. They've managed to waste time. Professor Curran's most important point there was, it's not the content, it's the time that you're losing. Time is, I'm sure you've heard, time is more important than money. Time is more valuable than money. So, again, it's a discipline. And if you are standing and playing or using your phone on social media, and then simultaneously while you're using it, you're telling your children not to use it, they're not going to do it. It's as simple as that. It's centuries old parenting advice that if children will do as you do, they will not do as you say, because when you say it, they also see that you're doing exactly the same thing you're telling them not to do. So they're going to question, well, you're telling me not to do something, yet you're doing it yourself. So they're going to think, the impression in their mind is, well, it can't be that bad if mum's doing it or dad's doing it, so I'll carry on doing it. Yet, if they see you apply the same rules in your life, then they are more likely to follow based on what you are doing within your own lives. These days, the glitz and glamour of this world, vain vulgarities and many societal ills are standing in front of us, trying to ensnare and take us away from morality. I'm sure everyone knows that. We're living in a society, even before the likes of TikToks and Instagrams coming, we were living in a society where the sexualization of society was on the up, and what the social media platforms have done is to build on that narrative, and they've made it available to people from all ages and walks of life. And protection needs to be put in place to ensure that children are protected. And faith plays a strong role in all of this protection. And the excessive use of TV, internet, social media, again, one can say it neglects from worship, but it neglects from from belief in God more than worship. Worship is, people, you put it in a box, but it leads to lack. It leads to the diminishing of morals, ethics, values. The Holy Quran clearly says, "O ye who believe, avoid most suspicions, for suspicion is in some cases is a sin, and spy not, nor backbite one another. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of his brother who is dead? Certainly you would loathe it. And fear God Almighty. Surely God Almighty is oft returning with compassion and is merciful." Chapter 41, verse 13. This verse explicitly forbids spying and suspicion, emphasizing the need to respect others' privacy. The Holy Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, emphasized the importance of protecting the vulnerable, particularly children, and these violations could be seen as a breach of ethical responsibility to protect the young. The beautiful religion of Islam stresses the importance of honesty and integrity. Allowing or encouraging children to falsify their ages to access platforms like TikTok goes against these principles. Social media platforms have a moral obligation to ensure that children are not exposed to content that is inappropriate for their age, as maintaining the purity and safety of children is a key concern in Islamic ethics. The protection of personal information and safeguarding of the privacy of individuals, especially children, is seen as a moral duty. The Holy Quran advocates for the protection of trust and the avoidance of harm to others. You're listening to The Breakfast Show with myself, Qayyum. When we come back, we're going to go on to our next topic of the morning, which is the GCSE results. We're going to be talking to various guests who will shed some light on it. We would love to hear from you. You can contact us on 0208 687 7878. You can call us or you can send us a message on WhatsApp on this number. Again, it's 0208 687 7878. You can join us or message us via our social media platforms at Voice of Islam UK, or you can email us via our platform website www.voiceofislam.co.uk. Stay tuned. We're going to go to some messages and news, and when we come back, we'll go on to the GCSE results. Do stay tuned. Welcome back.